Mad honey sits at the crossroads of culture and science. For centuries, mountain communities in the Himalayas have harvested it from towering cliffs. Guided by seasonal knowledge, weather patterns, and careful observation of bees and flowers. In recent decades, researchers have stepped in with laboratory tools to study its chemistry, risks, and potential benefits. The clearest understanding of mad honey does not come from one side alone. It emerges where traditional knowledge and scientific research meet, compare notes, and refine each other. Traditional knowledge begins with place. Honey hunters know where certain rhododendron species bloom, when nectar flows peak, and how bee behavior changes across the year. These details are not written in textbooks. They are learned through repetition, storytelling, and apprenticeship. Hunters know which cliffs produce stronger honey, which seasons carry higher risk, and how much is safe to consume. This knowledge is practical and conservative. It prioritizes survival, community health, and respect for the environment that produces the honey. Science approaches mad honey from a different angle. Researchers ask what compounds make it distinct, how those compounds affect the human body, and why effects vary between batches. Through chemical analysis, scientists identified gray anatoxins as the key agents responsible for mad honey's physiological effects. These compounds originate in certain rhododendron nectars and pass through bees into the honey. Laboratory work measures concentration levels, traces how the toxins interact with nerve and muscle cells, and explains symptoms reported for centuries by local users. On their own, lab findings can feel incomplete. A test may show toxin levels in a sample, but it cannot easily explain why two neighboring cliffs yield honey with different strength. This is where traditional insight fills the gap. Honey hunters can point to subtle differences in flower density, altitude, sunlight, exposure, and even wind patterns. When researchers incorporate these observations, sampling becomes more accurate. Studies begin to reflect real-world conditions instead of isolated specimens. The relationship also works in the opposite direction. Science helps clarify which parts of tradition are reliable and which need caution. For example, communities often describe mad honey as beneficial in very small amounts and dangerous when overused. Clinical research supports this distinction by showing dose-dependent effects. Low exposure may influence circulation or digestion, while higher doses can cause nausea, dizziness, and heart rhythm disruption. Scientific framing gives measurable boundaries to what tradition already sensed through experience. Another area of cooperation lies in safety. Traditional harvesters use visual cues and taste tests to estimate potency, but modern testing can detect toxin levels before consumption. When researchers share these findings with communities, it supports safer use without dismissing cultural practices. Instead of replacing tradition, science strengthens it by adding tools that reduce uncertainty. Ecology is another shared concern. Local hunters often emphasize restraint. They avoid overharvesting and follow unwritten rules about when to leave hives untouched. Scientific studies echo this caution, noting that giant honeybee populations are sensitive to disturbance and climate shifts. When conservation researchers listen to local harvesting rules, they gain proven strategies for sustainability. When communities hear ecological data, it reinforces long-held practices with new urgency. Misunderstanding arises when mad honey is removed from its context. In global markets, it is sometimes framed as a novelty or extreme substance, stripped of cultural guidance. Science alone cannot prevent misuse if it ignores how the honey was traditionally handled. Tradition alone cannot address new risks created by export, storage, and unfamiliar consumers. Only by combining both perspectives can mad honey be responsibly explained and managed. The most productive research today often includes collaboration. Scientists work with local guides to choose sampling sites. Anthropologists document oral histories alongside lab results. Medical researchers compare reported symptoms with biochemical models. Each side corrects the blind spots of the other. Tradition provides long-term observational data across generations. Science provides controlled testing and broader comparison. Mad honey teaches a larger lesson about knowledge itself. Not all understanding begins in a lab, and not all tradition remains accurate without examination. When research treats local expertise as data rather than folklore, and when tradition remains open to verification rather than secrecy, the result is deeper clarity. This balance respects culture while protecting health. In the end, mad honey is neither mystery nor miracle. It is a product of specific plants, specific bees, and specific human practices. Understanding it fully requires listening to those who have lived with it for centuries and to those who study it with modern tools. Together, research and tradition do not compete. They complete the picture. Subscribe for evidence-based cultural science content